Thousands of years before modern civilization, ancient Sumerian scribes carved stories into clay tablets, stories of beings who came from the stars, stories of gods who walked among humans. And buried within those ancient texts are details so specific, so strange, that they continue to puzzle researchers today. Details about Earth's oceans, about what lay beneath the waves, about resources the Anunnaki sought with an urgency that shaped human history. Tonight, we journey into those ancient records. We explore what the Sumerian tablets reveal about the ocean depths, about why these ancient astronauts traveled across the cosmos to our world, and about what they found waiting in the waters that cover 70% of our planet. If you enjoy deep dives into ancient mysteries and alternative history, subscribe to the channel. New documentaries every week exploring the unexplained corners of our past. The clay tablets discovered in ancient Mesopotamia contain more than mythology. They contain technical descriptions, navigational references, resource catalogues that read less like religious texts and more like survey reports. And when you examine what these tablets say about the oceans, about the depths, about what the Anunnaki extracted from beneath the waves, a different picture of ancient Earth begins to emerge. The Sumerians appeared suddenly in history around 4500 BCE in southern Mesopotamia. They brought with them advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and metallurgy that had no apparent developmental period, no gradual evolution from primitive to sophisticated. They simply arrived with a complete system already in place. Their astronomical knowledge was particularly remarkable. They knew about planets invisible to the naked eye. They understood celestial mechanics that modern science only rediscovered in recent centuries. And they attributed all of this knowledge to the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens. The word Anunnaki itself translates roughly to those who from heaven to earth came. In Sumerian cosmology, these were not metaphorical beings. They were physical entities with needs, conflicts, and objectives. The tablets describe them with anatomical precision. They ate, they drank, they reproduced, they formed political factions, they mined, and according to numerous tablets, they had a particular interest in Earth's vast oceans. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic derived from earlier Sumerian sources, contains a curious passage. It describes the division of responsibilities among the Anunnaki after their arrival on Earth. One group was assigned to the heavens, another to the Earth's surface. But a third group, often overlooked in modern interpretations, was assigned to the Abzu, the deep waters, the primordial ocean beneath the ground and within the seas. This division was not symbolic. The tablets describe it with administrative precision, numbers of workers assigned to each domain, hierarchies of command, production quotas. The Abzu assignment was considered the most difficult, the most dangerous. And according to later tablets, it was the Abzu workers who eventually rebelled, triggering events that would lead to the creation of humanity. But what were they doing in the Abzu? What resources in Earth's oceans justified the effort of interstellar travel? The answer appears repeatedly across different tablets from different periods. Gold. Not gold in the abstract sense of wealth or decoration. Gold as a specific, necessary material. The tablets describe the Anunnaki's need for gold in terms that suggest industrial application rather than monetary value. They needed quantities of it. They needed it refined to specific purities. And they needed it continuously. The Atrahasis, one of the most complete Sumerian flood narratives, describes the Anunnaki's gold mining operations with surprising detail. It speaks of the difficulty of extracting gold from the earth, of the depth of the mines, of the rebellion that erupted among the Anunnaki workers after 40 periods of hard labor. The exact duration of these periods remains debated, but the tablets make clear that extraction was grueling, dangerous work that even the Anunnaki themselves found unbearable. Modern alternative researchers often focus on the gold mines in southern Africa that show evidence of extremely ancient excavation. Mines in regions where gold deposits are accessible near the surface. But the tablets also reference another source of gold, a source that required different techniques, different tools, different methods of extraction. Ocean water contains gold. Modern science has confirmed this. Every liter of seawater contains approximately 13 billionths of a gram of gold. Dispersed throughout Earth's oceans, this adds up to an estimated 20 million tons of gold in dissolved form. Far more gold than exists in all known terrestrial deposits combined. But the concentration is so low that no modern extraction method has proven economically viable. We lack the technology to filter gold from seawater at industrial scale, despite decades of research into the possibility. The Sumerian tablets, however, describe processes that sound remarkably like advanced filtration. They speak of the Abzu workers using devices that drew water through chambers, that separated components, that accumulated metals over time. The descriptions are fragmentary, written in language that assumes the reader already understands the basic process. But the operational details that survive suggest a level of chemical engineering that seems impossible for ancient scribes to have invented without reference to actual technology. The Epic of Gilgamesh contains a passage often interpreted as purely mythological. Gilgamesh seeks immortality and is directed to the bottom of the ocean to retrieve a plant. He attaches stones to his feet and descends into the depths. He finds the plant growing on the ocean floor, the plant that grants renewed youth. Surface-level interpretation treats this as metaphor, but when examined alongside other tablets that describe Anunnaki ocean operations, a different reading becomes possible. The stones attached to the feet are a practical diving technique used in free-diving cultures worldwide. The plant from the ocean floor could be a reference to deep-sea botanical life, or it could be symbolic language for a process of extraction, of retrieving something valuable from the depths. Other tablets reference underwater structures, buildings beneath the waves, facilities where the Anunnaki conducted their work away from the surface. The descriptions are brief, mentioned in passing as if the locations were common knowledge to the original readers, but they consistently describe these facilities as being in deep water, in places where light does not reach, in the Abzu proper. Modern oceanography has discovered structures on the ocean floor that defy conventional explanation. Stone formations off the coast of Japan that appear geometrically precise, pyramid-like structures in the waters near Cuba, rectilinear features on the seabed that some researchers argue show signs of artificial construction. Mainstream archaeology typically attributes these to natural geological processes or misinterpretation of sonar data, but the descriptions in Sumerian tablets of Anunnaki facilities beneath the waves raise uncomfortable questions about assumptions we have made regarding what could and could not have existed in deep antiquity. The tablets describe the ocean differently than we do. To Sumerian scribes, recording what the Anunnaki taught them, the ocean was not simply water, it was a source of materials, a place of hidden resources, a realm that contained substances necessary for technologies the Anunnaki required. One tablet fragment, discovered in the ruins of Nippur, catalogues ocean resources with technical precision. It lists materials extracted from seawater. The list includes what translates roughly to metals, salts, and essences. The metals are described by properties rather than names: dense, resistant to corrosion, capable of conducting. These descriptions align with metals like gold, platinum, and rare earth elements, all of which exist in trace amounts in seawater. The salts listed include compounds used in what sounds like chemical processes, substances that facilitate separation, that enable purification, that preserve and stabilize other materials. Modern industrial chemistry uses salts extracted from seawater for countless applications. The Nippur tablet suggests the Anunnaki understood these applications thousands of years before modern chemistry rediscovered them. The essences are harder to interpret. The Sumerian words used suggest concentrated forms of something, distilled components, substances that exist only in certain conditions or through certain processes. Some researchers have speculated these might refer to organic compounds, oils, proteins, genetic material from ocean life. This raises another dimension of the Anunnaki's interest in Earth's oceans. The tablets describe the diversity of life in the seas with what seems like cataloging terminology. They list creatures by characteristics, by size, by behavior, by habitat depth, and they note which creatures possess qualities of interest. One tablet describes what sounds like a marine harvesting operation. The Anunnaki workers gather specific creatures from specific ocean regions. They process these creatures to extract something internal. The tablet uses language that could refer to organs, fluids, or genetic material. The extracted substance is then transported elsewhere for purposes the tablet does not explain. Modern biology has discovered extraordinary compounds in deep-sea life. Organisms living near hydrothermal vents produce proteins that withstand extreme temperatures. Deep-sea fish generate antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystal formation in freezing waters. Certain species of sharks produce squalene, a compound with applications in everything from vaccine production to cosmetics. The ocean is a pharmaceutical library, a genetic repository, a source of biological templates that evolution has refined over hundreds of millions of years. If the Anunnaki possessed advanced biotechnology, if they understood genetic engineering as some tablets seem to suggest, then Earth's oceans would have represented an invaluable resource, not just for raw materials like gold, but for the biological blueprints contained in the DNA of countless marine species, blueprints that could be studied, modified, and applied to their own purposes. The tablets that describe the creation of humanity contain curious details about this biological knowledge. The story of Enki and Ninmah creating the first humans involves a process that sounds remarkably like genetic engineering. They take existing material, they modify it, they combine it with divine essence, which could be interpreted as Anunnaki genetic material. They produce a hybrid, a being designed to serve specific functions. The language used to describe this process includes terms related to clay and earth, which traditional interpretations take literally, but Sumerian is a language of metaphor and double meaning. Clay could refer to base biological material. Earth could mean the terrestrial genetic stock available on the planet. The mixing and shaping could describe genetic manipulation rather than literal sculpture. And the tablets specify that this creation process happened in the Abzu, in the deep waters, in the domain associated with Enki, the Anunnaki god of wisdom and water, the god most closely connected to ocean operations and underground resources. Enki himself is a fascinating figure in Sumerian mythology. Unlike the sky god An or the air god Enlil, Enki rules the depths. He is described as dwelling beneath the waters, as controlling the flow of rivers and the productivity of the seas, as possessing secret knowledge that he sometimes shares with humans against the wishes of other Anunnaki leaders. In the flood narratives, it is Enki who warns the human Zeus Sudra to build a boat. Enki, who provides the dimensions and specifications. Enki, who acts as humanity's benefactor, while other Anunnaki leaders vote to destroy the human population entirely. His motivation for protecting humanity, according to the tablets, stems from his role in creating humans in the first place. He feels responsible for his creation, but Enki's association with the Abzu suggests another possible motive. If humans were created as laborers to replace rebellious Anunnaki workers in gold extraction, and if significant gold extraction occurred in ocean operations under Enki's supervision, then the flood that threatened to wipe out humanity also threatened to eliminate Enki's workforce. His intervention might have been as much about preserving his operational capacity as about compassion. The tablets describe pre-flood Earth differently than the world we know. They speak of a time when humans lived for extraordinary lifespans, when the climate was more uniform, when the oceans behaved differently. Some of these descriptions can be dismissed as mythological exaggeration, but others contain details that align with what geology tells us about Earth during certain periods of the last ice age. Between approximately 110,000 and 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered significant portions of the northern hemisphere. Sea levels were lower. Coastlines extended far beyond their current positions. What are now underwater continental shelves were dry land, and the ocean circulation patterns were different than today. If the Anunnaki arrived during this period, the Earth they found would have had accessible coastal regions that are now submerged. Facilities built on what was then shoreline would now be hundreds of feet underwater. Resources extracted from shallow seabeds that were exposed to rain would now require deep-sea diving to access. The flood described in Sumerian tablets could refer to the rapid sea level rise that occurred at the end of the last ice age. Approximately 14,000 years ago, massive glacial melt began. Sea levels rose more than 300 feet over the course of several thousand years. The rate of rise was not constant. Geological evidence points to periods of catastrophic flooding when ice dams failed, and enormous volumes of fresh water poured into the oceans in short time frames. For civilizations living in coastal regions, these flood events would have been apocalyptic. Entire territories submerged, cities swallowed by rising water, populations forced to flee inland or perish. If the Anunnaki maintained ocean facilities and coastal operations during this period, the geological flood would have disrupted their infrastructure as thoroughly as it disrupted human settlements. This raises questions about the timing of the Anunnaki's departure. The tablets are unclear about when the Anunnaki left Earth. Some describe their ascension back to the heavens after the flood. Others suggest a more gradual withdrawal as humans became self-sufficient. But if ocean resource extraction was central to their presence on Earth, and if geological changes made that extraction impossible or impractical, then the flood becomes a logical terminus point for their operations. There is another dimension to ocean resources that the tablets hint at but never fully explain. They reference power, energy, forces drawn from the depths. The language used is abstract, referring to concepts that may not have direct English equivalents. But the descriptions suggest that certain ocean locations possessed qualities the Anunnaki considered valuable beyond physical materials. Modern understanding of Earth's geology reveals that the ocean floor is far from geologically inert. Tectonic plate boundaries run through ocean basins. Hydrothermal vents release superheated water charged with minerals. Volcanic activity creates new oceanic crust continuously. The movement of water itself generates energy through currents and tides, and the Earth's magnetic field exhibits anomalies in certain ocean regions where unusual concentrations of magnetic minerals exist in the seafloor. Some alternative researchers have speculated that the Anunnaki might have harnessed geothermal energy from oceanic sources, tapped into the heat and pressure of hydrothermal systems, used the mineral-rich water from deep-sea vents for chemical processes. The tablets do not describe technology explicitly enough to confirm such theories, but they repeatedly associate the Abzu with power and productivity in ways that suggest more than symbolic language. One tablet describes an Anunnaki facility where water enters, undergoes transformation, and emerges with properties changed. The facility is described as being in the deep ocean, surrounded by heat and darkness. Workers tend to the process continuously. The output is collected and transported to the surface. Traditional interpretations read this as a metaphorical description of the underworld or a symbolic representation of agricultural irrigation. But the operational details are too specific for pure symbolism. They describe a process, a facility, an industrial operation. If the Anunnaki possessed technology capable of extracting energy or materials from extreme deep-sea environments, it would explain their interest in the Abzu. It would explain why they assigned workers to ocean operations despite the difficulty. It would explain why rebellion occurred among those workers, who labored in conditions far more challenging than surface mining. And it would explain why the creation of humanity was considered a solution to the Anunnaki labor problem. Humans could not survive in deep ocean facilities, but humans could perform surface-level work, could mine gold from terrestrial deposits, could cultivate crops and raise livestock, could take over the easier tasks while the Anunnaki focused their own efforts on deep-sea operations that humans could not perform. This creates an interesting timeline. If humans were created approximately 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, as some alternative chronologies suggest based on interpretations of Sumerian king lists, then humanity arose during the Ice Age period when sea levels were low and coastal access was easier. Humans served as the agricultural and mining workforce while the Anunnaki concentrated on ocean resource extraction. This arrangement continued for tens of thousands of years until geological changes disrupted the entire system. The flood ended the arrangement. Ocean levels rose. Coastal facilities were submerged. Deep-sea operations became more difficult or impossible. The Anunnaki faced a choice: invest enormous resources in adapting their operations to the new ocean conditions, or withdraw and find resources elsewhere. According to the tablets, they chose withdrawal. They left humanity to develop on its own, taking with them the advanced technology and knowledge that had made their operations possible. But they did not leave entirely without trace. The tablets themselves are part of the legacy. Knowledge transmitted to Sumerian scribes, astronomical data, mathematical systems, metallurgical techniques, agricultural practices, and descriptions, however fragmentary, of what the Anunnaki had done on Earth, what they had found in the oceans, what they had extracted from the depths. Modern attempts to locate evidence of ancient Anunnaki ocean operations face obvious challenges. If such facilities existed in what are now deep ocean regions, the infrastructure would have been submerged for 12,000 years. Metal corrodes, stone erodes, organic materials decay. Even if structures remain on the seabed, they would be covered by sediment, colonized by marine life, degraded by water chemistry and pressure. Yet oceanographers occasionally report anomalies. Sonar readings that suggest geometric structures, magnetic signatures that indicate concentrated metals, acoustic profiles that show unusual density patterns. Most of these anomalies are explained as natural features, volcanic formations, mineral deposits, unusual erosion patterns, but a small percentage resist conventional explanation. The Baltic Sea anomaly, discovered in 2011, is one example. Sonar imaging revealed a circular formation approximately 60 meters in diameter, resting on the seafloor at a depth of 90 meters. The formation exhibits features that some researchers argue appear artificial: steps, angles, surface patterns. Geological analysis suggests the object is likely a glacial deposit, a large rock shaped and transported by ancient ice sheets, but the precise geometry continues to generate debate. Similar formations exist off the coasts of Japan, India, and the Mediterranean. Most are dismissed as pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns and purpose in random natural formations. But the sheer number of these anomalies, combined with the descriptions in Sumerian tablets of underwater Anunnaki facilities, raises questions about whether all such formations can be so easily explained away. There is also the matter of ancient maps. The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, shows the coast of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy. Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820. The coastline shown on the map appears to depict Antarctica as it would look without ice coverage. Geological surveys confirm that the Antarctic coastline beneath the ice sheet matches the contours shown on the map. The Piri Reis map was based on earlier source maps, now lost. Maps that the admiral claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, or earlier. If accurate maps of ice-free Antarctica existed in antiquity, it implies that someone surveyed Antarctica when it was not covered in ice. The last time Antarctica was ice-free was millions of years ago, according to conventional geology. But some alternative researchers argue that Antarctica might have been partially ice-free much more recently, during interstadial periods of the last ice age, when global temperatures were temporarily higher. If an advanced civilization or visiting extraterrestrial group had the technology to conduct aerial surveys, they could have mapped Antarctica during such a period, and those maps could have been copied and recopied through successive civilizations until fragments survived into the medieval period. The Sumerian tablets do not mention Antarctica specifically, but they describe the Anunnaki conducting surveys of Earth, dividing the planet into regions, assigning territories. The scale of their operations, as described in various tablets, suggests a global presence rather than localized activity in Mesopotamia alone. If they were extracting resources from Earth's oceans on an industrial scale, they would have needed survey data. They would have needed to know where concentrations of valuable materials existed. They would have needed maps. This brings us to another aspect of Sumerian knowledge that seems anomalous. Their understanding of the solar system was far more accurate than it should have been. The Sumerians knew about Uranus and Neptune, planets invisible to the naked eye that modern astronomy did not discover until the 18th and 19th centuries respectively. Sumerian astronomical texts describe a solar system with 12 major bodies including the Sun, Moon, and 10 planets. They describe the orbital periods of these planets with surprising accuracy. Where did this knowledge come from? The traditional answer is that it is mythological, symbolic, or coincidentally correct. But if we take the tablets at face value, the Sumerians are explicitly stating that the Anunnaki taught them astronomy, that the Anunnaki showed them the layout of the solar system, that the Anunnaki came from a planet in our solar system, a planet the Sumerians called Nibiru, which followed a long elliptical orbit that brought it into the inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. Mainstream astronomy finds no evidence for such a planet. Searches for Planet 9, a hypothetical planet in the outer solar system whose gravitational effects might explain certain orbital anomalies, have found nothing conclusive. But the absence of current evidence does not necessarily mean the Sumerian account is pure fiction. It could mean our telescopes have not yet found what the Sumerians described. It could mean the orbital parameters are different than interpreted. Or it could mean Nibiru was not a planet at all, but a ship or space station that the Sumerians, lacking words for such concepts, described using the nearest astronomical analogy they understood. If the Anunnaki came from elsewhere in the solar system, it changes the nature of their mission to Earth. They would not have been interstellar travelers from distant star systems. They would have been neighbors, inhabitants of our own solar system who recognized Earth as a resource-rich world and established operations here. Where in the solar system might they have come from? Mars shows evidence of having once had liquid water on its surface, channels that appear to be ancient river valleys, minerals that form in the presence of water, a climate that was once warmer and thicker than today's thin, cold Martian atmosphere. If Mars was habitable in the distant past, it could have developed civilization. That civilization, facing environmental collapse as Mars lost its atmosphere and water, might have looked to Earth as a refuge or resource base. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn are other possibilities. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, is covered in ice, but geological evidence suggests a vast liquid ocean exists beneath the frozen surface. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, actively vents water vapor into space from subsurface oceans. If life exists in these subsurface oceans, if it evolved to intelligence, if it developed technology, it might have ventured outward to other worlds in search of resources or living space. These are speculations. The tablets do not provide enough detail to locate the Anunnaki's point of origin with certainty, but they are clear that the Anunnaki came from the heavens, that they traveled through space to reach Earth, and that they found Earth's resources, particularly its water and ocean materials, valuable enough to justify extended operations. The question of why they needed gold specifically has generated numerous theories. Gold is an excellent conductor of electricity. It does not corrode or tarnish. It reflects infrared radiation efficiently. Modern technology uses gold in electronics, in spacecraft, in high-end optical systems. Some alternative researchers have theorized that the Anunnaki used gold to repair their planet's atmosphere, dispersing it as reflective particles in the upper atmosphere to regulate temperature or radiation. Others suggest gold was used in their technology, in power systems or propulsion drives that required materials with gold's unique properties. The tablets themselves do not explain why gold was needed. They simply state that it was necessary, that the Anunnaki superiors demanded it, that quotas had to be met. That failure to deliver sufficient quantities resulted in punishment or demotion within the Anunnaki hierarchy. But the tablets are explicit that ocean extraction was part of the gold procurement operation, not the only source, but a significant component. And the difficulties of ocean extraction, the rebellion it provoked among the Anunnaki workers, the creation of humanity as a solution, all suggest that ocean gold was not merely supplementary. It was essential enough to justify extraordinary measures. Modern science has investigated the possibility of extracting gold from seawater. In the 1920s, a German chemist named Fritz Haber attempted to develop a process to extract gold from ocean water to help Germany pay its World War I reparations. He failed. The concentrations were too low, the chemistry too complex, the energy costs too high. Every subsequent attempt has reached the same conclusion. With current technology, extracting gold from seawater costs far more than the value of the gold recovered. But technology advances. Techniques improve. What is impossible today might be routine tomorrow. If the Anunnaki possessed technology even a few centuries ahead of ours, they might have solved the extraction problem. They might have developed filters or chemical processes that could economically separate gold from seawater at industrial scale. Or they might have had access to ocean gold in forms we do not see today. Hydrothermal vent systems, for example, continuously precipitate metals from superheated water. As the hot water cools in contact with cold seawater, dissolved minerals drop out of solution and accumulate around the vents. Modern vent systems accumulate copper, zinc, iron, and other metals in commercially significant concentrations. Some vent systems also precipitate gold, though usually in smaller quantities, but vent systems change over time. Geological activity shifts. New vents open, old vents close. The mineral composition of vent water varies based on the underlying geology. If during the Ice Age, when the Anunnaki were allegedly operating on Earth, there were hydrothermal vent systems that concentrated gold more efficiently than any known today, they would have represented rich mining targets. The Anunnaki could have harvested the precipitated metals directly, bypassing the need to filter vast volumes of seawater. This theory requires that such gold-rich vent systems existed and that they no longer do, which is unprovable given how little we know about ancient ocean floor geology. But it is not implausible. The ocean floor is geologically active. It is constantly being created at mid-ocean ridges and destroyed at subduction zones. The ocean floor that existed 12,000 years ago is not the same ocean floor that exists today in many regions. Features that existed then might have been subducted into the mantle. Evidence of ancient vent systems might have been destroyed by the very geological processes that created them in the first place. Another aspect of the tablets worth examining is their description of the Anunnaki's relationship with humanity. The earliest humans, according to Sumerian mythology, were created to serve the Anunnaki, to perform labor, to grow food, to mine gold. The relationship was explicitly hierarchical. Humans were servants, property, tools, but over time, the tablets describe the relationship evolving. Some Anunnaki took human lovers, produced hybrid offspring, taught humans knowledge and skills beyond basic labor. Enki is repeatedly described as a benefactor to humanity, sharing secrets, intervening to prevent humanity's destruction, encouraging human development even when it went against the wishes of other Anunnaki leaders. This evolution suggests that the Anunnaki were not monolithic. They had factions, disagreements. Some viewed humans as disposable laborers. Others saw potential for something more, and the tablets hint that these disagreements contributed to the Anunnaki's eventual departure. The faction that wanted to preserve and nurture humanity was apparently outvoted or overruled by the faction that wanted to eliminate or abandon humanity after the flood disrupted Anunnaki operations. The post-flood tablets describe a changed world. The Anunnaki rebuild some cities, they re-establish contact with human populations, they continue to rule as kings and gods for a time, but their presence diminishes. The tablets describe them ascending to the heavens more frequently, returning less often, until finally, they are described as watching from afar but no longer directly intervening. This gradual withdrawal timeline matches the archaeological record in an interesting way. The earliest cities in Mesopotamia show signs of sudden, sophisticated planning. Knowledge of irrigation, architecture, and administration appears fully formed. Then, over subsequent centuries, there is a slow decline in certain technical capabilities. Later generations lose knowledge their ancestors had. Building techniques become cruder. Astronomical precision decreases. Medical knowledge fragments. This pattern is consistent with a mentor civilization withdrawing gradually, leaving humans to maintain and develop systems on their own. The knowledge remains, but without the original teachers to explain underlying principles, it degrades over time into ritual and tradition, rather than understood science. If the Anunnaki were real, and did depart Earth approximately 12,000 years ago after the geological upheavals of the flood period, they left behind a human population that had been shaped by their presence. Humans who had been genetically modified for certain traits, who had been taught agricultural and metallurgical techniques, who had been given astronomical knowledge and mathematical systems, and who had been told stories. Stories that would be passed down, carved into clay, preserved across millennia. The persistence of these stories is remarkable. The Epic of Gilgamesh exists in multiple versions from different periods. The Enuma Elish was copied and recopied. The king lists survived in fragments from libraries separated by centuries. These were not casual entertainments. They were important enough to preserve, to protect, to teach to new generations of scribes who carefully copied the ancient texts even when the civilizations that created them had long since fallen. Why preserve these particular stories? What made them so important? One answer is religious significance. These were stories of the gods, sacred texts, theology. Preserving them was an act of devotion. But reading the tablets without religious preconception, they do not read like worship. They read like history. Complicated, sometimes contradictory history full of political maneuvering, resource management, and labor disputes. The tone is often matter of fact. This happened, then that happened, and here are the consequences. It is the history of a time when humanity was not alone on Earth, when more advanced beings operated here, when those beings used Earth's resources, including ocean resources, for their own purposes, when humans served those beings until geological catastrophe disrupted the arrangement and forced a reconfiguration of the relationship. And buried in that history are details about what those more advanced beings found in Earth's oceans, what they considered valuable, what they went to great lengths to extract, what they needed enough to create an entirely new species to help them obtain it. The ocean depths remain largely unexplored by modern science. We have better maps of the Moon and Mars than we do of our own ocean floor. Vast regions of the deep sea have never been surveyed in detail. We know more about the surface features of distant planets than we know about the geology and biology of the abyssal plains. What might still exist down there? Structures built by the Anunnaki, machinery corroded beyond recognition, remnants of extraction operations, biological experiments, storage facilities for materials they intended to retrieve later. The tablets suggest the Anunnaki planned to return, that their departure was not permanent. If they left infrastructure in place, if they cached resources in ocean locations they could relocate upon return, those sites might still exist. Finding such sites would be extraordinarily difficult. The ocean is vast. Technology capable of surviving deep-sea pressures and conducting detailed surveys is expensive and limited. Most ocean research focuses on natural features, biology, and geology, rather than searching for artifacts of ancient advanced civilizations. And even if anomalies were found, proving they were artificial rather than natural would require extensive analysis and would face significant skepticism from mainstream science. But the possibility exists. The tablets describe a world where advanced beings operated extensively in Earth's oceans, where they built facilities, extracted resources, and conducted operations that humans observed and recorded. Those descriptions are detailed enough that they cannot be dismissed as pure imagination. Someone recorded observations of technologies and activities that made sense to them in their context but seem extraordinary from our perspective. Perhaps what the Sumerian tablets really reveal is a history we have forgotten, a chapter of Earth's past that occurred before conventional civilization, a time when visitors from elsewhere in the solar system or beyond used our world as a resource base, when they found in our oceans materials they needed, when they operated here long enough to leave marks on our genetics, our culture, and our mythology. And perhaps they left instructions, encoded in the stories, hidden in the mathematics, buried in the astronomical data they taught to our ancestors. Instructions for what to do when we became advanced enough to understand, for where to look, for what we might find if we search the ocean depths with sufficient care. The Sumerian tablets have been available for study for over a century. Thousands of tablets have been translated, but new tablets are still being discovered in archaeological sites. So, museums still hold untranslated tablets in their collections. Libraries in Iraq and Syria contain tablets that have never been fully catalogued. And each new translation has the potential to add details to the picture of what the Anunnaki were doing on Earth. Ocean references in the tablets have historically received less attention than agricultural or astronomical passages. Scholars focus on what seems relevant to understanding ancient Mesopotamian culture. Ocean operations seemed less relevant than ziggurats or irrigation systems. But as our own technology advances, as we become capable of deep-sea exploration and resource extraction ourselves, the ocean passages in the tablets become more intriguing. They describe things we are only now beginning to attempt: extracting minerals from seawater, harvesting biological resources from the deep sea, tapping geothermal energy from oceanic sources. The Anunnaki, if we believe the tablets, were doing all of this thousands of years ago with technology we cannot fully reconstruct from the fragmentary descriptions that survive. This raises a final question. If the Anunnaki left Earth but planned to return, what would trigger that return? The tablets suggest they were monitoring humanity, watching our development, waiting for something. Some researchers have speculated they were waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of technological sophistication. Others suggest they were waiting for their planet's orbit to bring them back into the inner solar system. Still others believe they never really left, that they remain in hidden bases or on nearby celestial bodies, observing. But if we take the ocean focus seriously, another possibility emerges. Perhaps they are waiting for humanity to begin exploiting ocean resources in earnest, to develop the technology to extract gold from seawater, to establish permanent deep-sea facilities, to tap the energy and materials available in the ocean depths. When humanity reaches that threshold, when we begin to compete for the same resources the Anunnaki came here to obtain, that might be the signal they are waiting for. The indicator that we have matured enough, technologically and organizationally, to be worth direct contact again. We are not there yet. Our ocean technology is primitive compared to what the tablets describe. Our deep-sea facilities are temporary. Our extraction methods inefficient. Our understanding of the ocean depths still rudimentary. But we are advancing. Each decade brings new capabilities, new discoveries, new possibilities, and the ocean keeps its secrets. Beneath the waves, in the darkness and pressure of the abyss, evidence of ancient operations might still exist, waiting to be found, waiting to confirm or refute the extraordinary claims recorded in Sumerian clay tablets thousands of years ago. The tablets themselves are artifacts, physical objects we can hold, translate, study. They are not legends passed down orally. They are written records created by people who lived in urban civilizations, who kept accounts, who documented their world with care. The scribes who carved these tablets were not creating fiction. They were recording what they believed to be true, what they had been taught, what perhaps they had witnessed. We cannot dismiss their accounts simply because they challenge our assumptions about ancient capabilities. We cannot ignore the technical details they provide, simply because we find the implications uncomfortable. The tablets describe ocean operations, resource extraction, advanced technology, beings from elsewhere who used our world for their purposes. And whether we interpret those descriptions literally or metaphorically, they represent a view of deep history that is radically different from the conventional timeline of human development. In the Sumerian worldview, humanity was not the first or only intelligent species to use Earth. We were created by others, taught by others, shaped by interactions with others who were here before us and who eventually departed, leaving us to continue the story alone. That worldview is preserved in clay, buried in ruins, scattered across museums. And slowly, as translations improve and new tablets are discovered, the full scope of what the Sumerians were trying to tell us about our origins and about what the Anunnaki found in Earth's oceans becomes clearer. The ocean covers most of our planet. We evolved from ocean life. Our bodies are mostly water. Our cells operate using chemistry that works only in aqueous environments. In a sense, we never truly left the ocean. We carry it within us. And if the tablets are to be believed, the ocean is where the Anunnaki found what they needed, where they worked, where they struggled, where they built and extracted and operated until changing conditions forced them to leave or go dormant. The ocean is not just the cradle of terrestrial life. According to the Sumerians, it was the workplace of the gods. We stand at an interesting moment in history. Our technology is finally approaching levels where we could verify or refute some of the claims in the tablets. We can send robots to the deepest ocean trenches. We can map the seafloor with sonar. We can analyze the chemistry of hydrothermal vents. We can extract and sequence DNA from deep-sea organisms. And we can begin to seriously investigate whether traces of ancient advanced activity might exist in the ocean depths. What we find might surprise us. It might confirm that the ocean floor is exactly what mainstream geology expects. Ancient, geologically active, but entirely natural with no trace of artificial structures or operations. Or it might reveal anomalies, artifacts, evidence that we were not the first to explore and exploit Earth's ocean resources. Either way, the Sumerian tablets have provided us with a map. Not a literal map showing X marks the spot, but a conceptual map. A framework for understanding what to look for, where to search, what kinds of evidence might exist. They have told us, in the language available to them thousands of years ago, that the Anunnaki came here for ocean resources, that they found gold and other materials in the seas, that they built facilities and operated in the Abzu for extended periods, that this ocean activity was central to their presence on Earth. We can choose to dismiss those claims, to attribute them to imagination or religious invention, to assume that ancient scribes were incapable of recording actual observations of advanced technology and must have been making things up. Or we can take them seriously, not credulously, but seriously, as potential data points, as descriptions that might reference real events filtered through the understanding and language limitations of the observers. The scientific method requires that we follow evidence wherever it leads. If the evidence, including the written record preserved in Sumerian tablets, suggests that Earth's oceans were the site of ancient advanced operations, then we should investigate that possibility. We should look, we should search. We should bring the same rigor to exploring ancient ocean sites that we bring to excavating ancient cities on land. And perhaps, in the pressure and darkness of the deep sea, we will find confirmation, metal that does not corrode, structures that do not erode, formations that cannot be explained by geology alone. Proof that the Sumerians were recording history, not myth. Or perhaps we will find nothing. Perhaps the ocean floor will reveal only what we expect. Natural processes, geological features, no trace of the Anunnaki or their works. In which case, we will have gained a more complete understanding of our ocean depths and eliminated one possibility from the range of explanations for Sumerian claims. But we will not know until we look, until we search with the intent to find what the tablets describe, until we take seriously the possibility that our ancestors were telling us the truth about what they knew, even if that truth contradicts our assumptions about the past. The tablets are waiting, the ocean is waiting, and somewhere in the intersection of ancient text and modern exploration, we may finally learn what the Anunnaki truly saw in Earth's oceans, what they found valuable enough to cross the solar system to obtain, what they extracted from the depths with such difficulty that it provoked rebellion among even their own kind, what drew them here and what, eventually, their departure meant for humanity. We were left behind, created to serve but ultimately freed to develop on our own. The knowledge the Anunnaki taught our ancestors fragmented over time, but pieces survived, carved in clay, preserved through centuries, waiting for us to become advanced enough to understand what we were being told. We are approaching that threshold. Our oceanography is improving. Our chemistry is advancing. Our capacity to search the deep sea is growing year by year. And the questions posed by Sumerian tablets about ancient ocean operations are becoming questions we might actually be able to answer. Not through speculation, not through interpretation of mythology, but through direct investigation, through sending instruments into the Abzu and seeing what they find, through testing whether the descriptions in the tablets correspond to physical reality or exist only as cultural narrative. The ocean keeps its secrets well. Pressure, darkness, and corrosion have preserved very little from even relatively recent shipwrecks. What might remain of facilities built 12,000 years ago or more would be degraded beyond easy recognition, but not necessarily beyond all recognition. Stone endures. Certain alloys resist corrosion. Geometric arrangements can persist even when the materials that formed them have been replaced by sediment and marine growth. And the ocean floor is not uniform. Some regions are geologically active, constantly churning and renewing, but other regions are remarkably stable. Vast abyssal plains where sediment accumulates slowly and conditions change little over millennia. If the Anunnaki built in such regions, if they chose stable locations for their facilities, remnants could still exist. The search would require resources, funding, political will, international cooperation. Ocean exploration is expensive, deep-sea operations more so, and convincing funding agencies to search for evidence of ancient astronaut activity in the ocean depths would face significant resistance from mainstream science. But the potential payoff is enormous. If evidence were found, if even a single artifact of undeniable artificial origin and extreme antiquity were recovered from the deep ocean floor, it would revolutionize our understanding of history. It would confirm that advanced activity occurred on Earth long before conventional civilization. It would validate core claims of alternative history. And it would suggest that the Sumerian tablets are more reliable historical sources than currently believed. It would also raise immediate questions. If the Anunnaki were real, where are they now? Did they truly leave, or do they maintain a presence somewhere in the solar system? If they plan to return, when might that return occur? And what would such a return mean for humanity? These are not comfortable questions. They challenge the narrative of human independence and self-determination. They suggest we might be, in some sense, a created species, products of genetic engineering rather than purely natural evolution. And they imply that Earth might not be entirely ours, that we might be using a world that others have prior claimed to, others who might return to reclaim what they consider theirs. But they are questions the Sumerian tablets force us to consider. The tablets do not describe gods in the abstract sense of supernatural beings. They describe physical entities with needs and limitations. Entities who came here from elsewhere, who used our resources, who created us to help them, who left when conditions changed but who might come back. Taking those descriptions at face value requires setting aside conventional assumptions. It requires entertaining possibilities that mainstream science rejects, but it does not require abandoning scientific method. We can investigate ancient astronaut claims scientifically. We can search for physical evidence. We can test predictions derived from the tablets against what we find in the real world. The ocean is the key. According to the tablets, the ocean is where the Anunnaki focused significant effort, where they built, where they extracted, where they worked in conditions so difficult that it provoked crisis among them. If we want to find evidence of their presence, the ocean is where we should look. And we are only beginning to look, only beginning to map the seafloor in detail, only beginning to explore the deep sea with capable instruments. only beginning to understand the full scope of what exists beneath the waves. What we find in the coming decades might rewrite history, might confirm that the Sumerians were recording actual events, might prove that Earth's oceans hold secrets far older and stranger than we have imagined. Or we might find nothing, might confirm that the ocean floor is exactly what we expect, might prove that Sumerian tablets, however fascinating, are cultural artifacts rather than historical documentation of ancient astronaut activity. Either way, the search itself is worthwhile, the ocean is worth understanding, the depths are worth exploring, and if, in the process, we happen to stumble upon evidence that our ancestors were telling the truth about visitors who came here from the stars and who found in our oceans exactly what they needed, then we will have gained knowledge of extraordinary significance, knowledge that will change how we see ourselves, how we understand our origins, how we interpret our relationship to the cosmos and to the other intelligences that might exist within it. The Sumerian tablets are waiting to be proven or disproven, the ocean is waiting to be fully explored, and humanity is finally reaching the technological level where we can begin to answer the questions our ancestors carved into clay thousands of years ago. Questions about who was here before us, what they wanted, what they found in the depths, and whether they might return. The answers lie in the Abzu, in the deep waters, in the realm Enki ruled, in the domain where the Anunnaki worked and struggled, and ultimately rebelled against conditions they could no longer endure. We are children of those who served the Anunnaki, created to replace them, designed to continue their work. And now, thousands of years later, we are finally developing the capacity to follow them into the depths and see what they saw. The ocean awaits, dark, deep, and full of secrets that predate civilization, secrets that Sumerian scribes tried to preserve, secrets about visitors who came from the heavens and found in our waters resources worth crossing the solar system to obtain. We stand at the threshold, technology in hand, tablets translated, ocean before us. The question is whether we have the courage to search, to look for what the Anunnaki left behind, to test whether the stories are true. The ocean will answer, but only if we ask, only if we descend into the Abzu and search with eyes capable of recognizing what we find. The tablets have told us what to look for, the ocean has preserved the evidence, if evidence exists. And we, the descendants of those who served the Anunnaki, have finally reached the point where we can verify our own origin story. Not through faith, not through interpretation, but through direct investigation of what lies beneath the waves. The deep ocean is the last frontier on Earth, the least explored, the least understood, and according to tablets carved in clay before the pyramids were built, it is where the gods worked, where they found what they needed, where they changed the course of life on this planet. We dismissed those tablets as mythology for centuries. But what if they were history? What if the Sumerians were trying to tell us something true about our past, something important that we needed to remember? The ocean remembers, stone and metal remember, the depths preserve what the surface erodes away. And deep in the Abzu, in the darkness where light does not reach, where pressure crushes and cold numbs, there might still exist proof that we were not alone, that visitors came, that they worked in our waters, that they shaped our species, and that they left, but not forever. The tablets say they will return. When humanity reaches a certain level, when we become worthy, when we are ready, perhaps the threshold is our capacity to explore the ocean depths ourselves, to find what they found, to extract what they extracted, to operate in the Abzu as they once did. When we cross that threshold, when we prove ourselves capable of doing what the Anunnaki did, perhaps that is when the return occurs, when contact resumes, when the relationship that was interrupted by the flood and the geological upheavals of the transitional period is restored. We cannot know until we search, until we explore, until we take the Sumerian tablets seriously enough to investigate their claims with scientific rigor. The ocean is waiting, the depths are calling, and the Anunnaki's legacy, whatever form it takes, is down there somewhere, beneath the waves, in the realm of Enki, in the Abzu where humanity was created and where the gods once labored. We have the tools now, we have the technology, we have the translations of the tablets. All we need is the will to look, the courage to challenge conventional history. The determination to search for evidence, our ancestors insisted, was there. The ocean depths are vast, but they are not infinite. With time, resources, and systematic survey, we can explore them, we can map them, we can understand them, and we can find what is hidden there, if anything is hidden at all. The Sumerian tablets point the way. They describe what to look for, where operations occurred, what the Anunnaki valued, what they extracted from the seas. Following those clues requires taking the tablets seriously, not as religious texts, not as mythology, but as potentially accurate historical records created by people who observed things they did not fully understand, but tried their best to describe. When we approach the tablets that way, When we treat them as data rather than fiction, they become useful, they become guides, they become maps to a hidden history that conventional archaeology has overlooked. And the ocean becomes not just a natural feature of our planet, but a repository of evidence, an archive of ancient activity, a place where proof might still exist of visitors who came here long ago and found in our waters exactly what they needed. The search begins with questions the tablets raise, questions about gold extraction from seawater, about deep ocean facilities, about why the Anunnaki assigned workers to the Abzu, about what they found there that was valuable enough to cause rebellion, crisis, and ultimately the creation of humanity. And the search continues with investigation, with sending instruments into the depths, with mapping, with sampling, with analyzing what we find against what the tablets describe. Science provides the method, the tablets provide the hypothesis, the ocean provides the evidence, or the lack thereof. What we discover will either confirm that the Sumerians recorded real events, or it will demonstrate that their accounts are imaginative rather than observational. Either outcome advances knowledge, either answer resolves uncertainty. But the search must happen. The investigation must occur. We cannot simply dismiss the tablets without checking whether their claims correspond to physical reality. That would be intellectually dishonest, unscientific, a failure of curiosity and rigor. The tablets say the Anunnaki came from the heavens, that they found Earth rich in resources they needed, that they established operations here, that they extracted materials from our oceans using technology and methods we can only partly understand from fragmentary descriptions. And the tablets say they left, but they left behind more than clay records. They left behind genetic changes in humanity, knowledge that persisted, astronomical data, mathematical systems, agricultural techniques, metallurgy, and possibly physical artifacts in locations we have not yet searched thoroughly enough to find. The ocean is the logical place to search first. It is where the tablets focus significant attention, where the Abzu operations occurred, where the most difficult and important work was done, where crisis erupted, where solutions were implemented. If the Anunnaki were real, if their operations were real, the ocean should contain evidence, structural remains, tools, residues of extraction processes, concentrations of materials that cannot be explained by natural processes alone. Finding such evidence would transform human self-understanding overnight, would force re-examination of everything we think we know about ancient history, would open questions about genetic heritage, about humanity's purpose, about our relationship to cosmic neighbors who might return. Not finding evidence would also provide useful information, would suggest that Sumerian accounts, however detailed, do not correspond to actual events, would support conventional interpretations of ancient texts as mythology rather than history, would allow us to approach human origins through standard evolutionary biology without need to account for genetic intervention from visiting extraterrestrials. Both outcomes matter. Both advance understanding. The key is conducting the search with sufficient thoroughness that we can be confident in the results. That search is beginning. Oceanography is advancing. Deep-sea exploration is expanding. Our capacity to investigate the ocean floor is growing. And as it does, the possibility of finding evidence that the Anunnaki were real and operated in Earth's oceans grows as well. The tablets have been waiting for thousands of years, patient, preserved, ready to guide us when we finally became capable of following where they point. That time is now. This generation, this moment in history when our technology finally matches our curiosity about deep history and ancient possibilities. The ocean depths await investigation. The Abzu is calling, and the legacy of the Anunnaki, whatever it may be, lies waiting to be discovered beneath the waves. In darkness and pressure, in cold and isolation, in the realm where few humans have ever ventured and fewer still have lingered long enough to truly see what is there. But we can go now. We can search. We can shine light into the depths and record what we find. The tablets have told us what to look for. The Anunnaki left us instructions preserved in Sumerian clay, descriptions of their work, references to their facilities, hints about where they operated and what they valued. Taking those instructions seriously, investigating the claims they make, searching for physical evidence in the locations they describe, this is how we honor the effort ancient scribes made to preserve this knowledge across millennia. And this is how we finally answer the question that has lingered since the first Sumerian tablets were translated over a century ago. Were the Anunnaki real? Did they truly come here from the heavens? Did they find in Earth's oceans resources they needed? Did they create humanity to serve them? Did they leave, intending to return? Or are the tablets purely symbolic? Cultural narratives without historical foundation? Imaginative explanations for mysteries ancient people could not otherwise explain? The ocean knows. The depths contain the answer. And we, finally, have the tools to ask the question properly, through systematic survey, through analysis of anomalies, Through investigation of locations, the tablets describe, through testing the predictions that Anunnaki ocean operations would have left certain kinds of evidence in certain kinds of places. The search is scientific. The method is rigorous. The stakes are profound. If we find evidence, everything changes. If we find nothing, we gain clarity. Either way, the search itself represents humanity coming of age, becoming capable of investigating our own origins without limiting ourselves to conventional narratives, following evidence wherever it leads, even into uncomfortable territory that challenges foundational assumptions about who we are and how we came to be. The Sumerian tablets point to the ocean, to the Abzu, to the deep waters where Enki ruled and where the Anunnaki labored, where gold was extracted and resources harvested, where facilities were built and operations maintained, where the gods worked until they could work no more and humanity was created to continue the task. We are the descendants of that creation, shaped by the Anunnaki's needs, designed for their purposes. And now, thousands of years after their departure, we are finally capable of returning to the sites of their operations and seeing what remains. The ocean floor is waiting. The evidence, if it exists, is waiting. And the truth about humanity's origins is waiting to be discovered in the darkness and pressure of the deep sea. The tablets have spoken. The clues are preserved. The path is marked. All that remains is the search itself, the descent into the Abzu, the investigation of what the Anunnaki left behind when they departed Earth and left us to develop on our own. We are ready. Our technology is sufficient. Our curiosity is engaged. Our determination to understand our past is strong enough to overcome skepticism and resistance. The ocean awaits, the depths call, and the legacy of the Anunnaki, whatever form it takes, is down there in the waters that cover most of our world, in the realm where life began, where the gods worked, where humanity's story truly started, according to tablets carved in clay before history as we know it even existed. The search begins with a single submersible, a single survey, a single decision to take the tablets seriously enough to investigate their claims, and it continues until we find answers, until we know whether the Anunnaki were real, until we understand what they found in our oceans that was valuable enough to justify their presence here. The tablets have waited long enough. The ocean has kept its secrets long enough, and humanity has wandered long enough. Now is the time to search, to explore, to discover what lies beneath the waves in the depths where the Anunnaki once worked. The Abzu is calling, the ancient realm of Enki, the domain of deep waters and hidden knowledge, and we, children of those who served the Anunnaki, are finally ready to answer that call. The specific tablets that reference ocean operations come from various periods of Mesopotamian history. The earliest fragments date to the early dynastic period, around 2600 BCE. These are administrative texts, dry and bureaucratic, listing quantities of materials extracted from what they call the lower waters. The terminology is consistent across multiple tablets from different cities. Cedar logs imported from Lebanon, copper from Cyprus, tin from unknown sources, and gold from the lower waters. That phrase, lower waters, appears in economic texts with the same regularity as any other resource source. It is treated as an established extraction site. Workers are assigned there. Overseers report production numbers. Rations are calculated for those working in difficult conditions. The tablets do not explain what the lower waters are because the original readers already knew. It was common knowledge in ancient Sumer that certain resources came from ocean sources. But later tablets, particularly mythological texts like the Atrahasis and the Eridu Genesis, provide more context. They describe the lower waters as the domain of Enki. They associate it with the Abzu, the primordial ocean beneath the earth, and they make clear that operations in the lower waters were difficult, dangerous, and essential to the Anunnaki's objectives. The Atrahasis epic, in particular, contains detailed descriptions of the labor dispute that led to humanity's creation. The text states explicitly that the Anunnaki workers assigned to the Abzu labored for 40 periods. Most scholars interpret these as 40 years, though some alternative chronologists argue the Sumerian term could indicate longer cycles. Regardless of the exact time frame, the work was described as backbreaking. The workers dug deep. They hauled heavy loads. They worked in darkness and danger, and eventually they rebelled. The rebellion scene in the Atrahasis is vivid. The workers throw down their tools. They march to the house of Enlil, the chief of the Anunnaki on Earth. They surround his dwelling. They demand relief from unbearable conditions. Enlil is furious at the insurrection. He calls for the rebellious workers to be punished. But Enki, who supervised the Abzu operations, argues for a different solution. Rather than punish the workers or force them back to work, Enki proposes creating a new being, a primitive worker who can take over the most difficult tasks. This is humanity's origin according to the Sumerian creation account. We were designed as a labor solution, genetic material from the earth, meaning terrestrial primates or hominids, combined with genetic essence from the Anunnaki themselves. The resulting hybrid possessed intelligence sufficient to follow instructions, dexterity sufficient to use tools, and endurance sufficient to work in conditions the Anunnaki found intolerable. The creation process is described with surprising biological detail. Ninmah, the Anunnaki scientist tasked with the actual creation work, experiments with different combinations. Early attempts produce beings with defects. Some are too weak, some cannot speak, some cannot reproduce. But through iterative refinement, Ninmah perfects the design. The successful hybrid is called the Lulu, the mixed one. This is humanity. The tablets specify that the creation process took place in the Bit Shimti, which translates to house where the breath of life is breathed in. This was not a temple. It was a laboratory, a facility where the biological work occurred. And multiple tablets place this facility in or near the Abzu, in Enki's domain, in the region associated with ocean operations. If we take this literally, the first humans were created in a facility adjacent to or within an ocean extraction site. They were designed to replace Anunnaki workers who could no longer tolerate the conditions of deep-sea resource mining. And the earliest humans were immediately put to work doing exactly that, extracting gold and other materials from ocean sources under Anunnaki supervision. This explains several curious features of early human development that conventional anthropology struggles to account for. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appear in the fossil record approximately 300,000 years ago in Africa. But for most of that time, humans behaved like any other large mammal. They used simple stone tools. They lived in small groups. They followed migration patterns of game animals. There is no evidence of complex culture, language, or technology for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, approximately 50,000 years ago, something changes. Human behavior becomes markedly more sophisticated, almost overnight in evolutionary terms. Complex tools appear, art emerges, burial practices become elaborate, language develops fully, long-distance trade networks form. Humans begin to behave like modern humans, rather than upright apes. Mainstream anthropology calls this the Great Leap Forward, or the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. The cause is debated. Some researchers point to genetic mutations that enhanced cognitive capacity. Others suggest that language crossed a threshold that enabled cultural transmission of knowledge. Still others propose that population pressures forced innovation. Alternative researchers, examining Sumerian tablets, propose a different explanation. 50,000 years ago is when the Anunnaki completed their genetic engineering project. Earlier humans were prototypes, experimental versions, not fully functional for the tasks the Anunnaki needed performed. But around 50,000 years ago, the design was perfected. Humans version 2, so to speak. Beings with full language capacity, advanced tool use, symbolic thinking, and the ability to receive and implement complex instructions from Anunnaki overseers. This timeline aligns with other interesting data points. Mitochondrial DNA studies suggest that all modern humans descend from a population bottleneck approximately 70,000 to 50,000 years ago. All living humans share a relatively recent common female ancestor, called mitochondrial Eve by geneticists, who lived in this time frame. Similarly, Y chromosome studies point to a common male ancestor, Y chromosomal Adam, from roughly the same period. Conventional genetics explains this bottleneck as the result of a catastrophic event, possibly the Toba supervolcanic eruption approximately 74,000 years ago, that reduced human populations to perhaps a few thousand individuals. The population recovered, but everyone alive today descends from that small founding group. The Sumerian interpretation offers an alternative. Mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam were not survivors of a natural catastrophe. They were the first successful prototypes of the genetically engineered human, the Lulu, the being Ninmah created in the Bit Shimti. All modern humans descend from this founding pair or small founding group because all modern humans are the products of the Anunnaki genetic engineering program. This is, of course, highly speculative and rejected by mainstream science, but it is what the tablets describe, and it explains features of human genetics that are otherwise puzzling. Humans have 46 chromosomes. Our closest relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, have 48. Somewhere in our lineage, 2 chromosomes fused. Geneticists can identify the fusion point. They can explain how it happened mechanistically. But why it happened, why evolution would favor a chromosome count that reduced genetic diversity, remains unclear. Unless the fusion was deliberate. Unless human chromosome 2, the product of the fusion, was engineered specifically to introduce or remove certain genetic sequences. The tablets describe the Anunnaki mixing their essence with terrestrial genetic material. A chromosome fusion would be exactly the kind of modification necessary to make such mixing stable and heritable. Again, this is not accepted science. It is interpretation of ancient texts through the lens of modern genetics. But it is worth noting that the tablets anticipated genetic engineering thousands of years before we discovered DNA. They described creating new life forms by combining essences from different sources, which is precisely what genetic engineering does. The ocean connection becomes relevant here because the tablets explicitly state that the genetic creation process occurred in the Abzu region. The facility where humans were designed and produced was located near the ocean extraction operations. This suggests that immediate deployment to those operations was part of the design requirements. Humans needed to function in coastal and shallow marine environments, needed to assist with tasks related to ocean resource extraction, needed to work under conditions that Anunnaki could no longer tolerate for extended periods. What were these conditions specifically? The tablets provide clues. The Abzu workers complained about the constant water, about the depth of the digging, about the weight of the materials they hauled. These complaints suggest that the work involved underwater excavation or collection, diving to retrieve materials from the seafloor or from underwater structures. Modern freediving can reach depths of approximately 200 meters under ideal conditions using specialized training and techniques. But such dives are brief, measured in minutes, and require extensive surface recovery time. Industrial work at such depths would be impossible using freediving alone. The Anunnaki must have had technology that allowed extended underwater work periods. The tablets reference devices that sound like breathing apparatus, descriptions of workers using tools that provided air, references to equipment that allowed them to descend and ascend safely. The language is fragmentary and assumes familiarity with the technology, so we cannot reconstruct the devices from the descriptions alone. But the operational parameters are clear. Anunnaki workers could operate underwater for extended periods. They excavated materials from the ocean floor. They transported these materials to surface facilities or underwater processing sites. And they did this continuously for 40 periods until the labor became unbearable. Why would such work become unbearable for beings with advanced technology? The tablets hint at several factors: the psychological strain of working in darkness and isolation, the physical stress of pressure and cold despite protective equipment, the danger of equipment failure at depth, and perhaps most significant, the sheer duration of the operation. 40 periods of continuous work is a long time. If we interpret this as 40 years, that is 4 decades of the same grueling routine. If the periods are longer, as some alternative chronologists suggest, the duration becomes even more psychologically crushing. Workers become exhausted not just physically but mentally. Morale breaks down, resentment builds. Eventually, even with advanced technology and superior physical capabilities, the workers reach their limit. The solution proposed by Enki was to create beings who could tolerate these conditions better than the Anunnaki themselves. Humans, being designed for Earth's environment, would find ocean work challenging but not impossible. Being less advanced than the Anunnaki, humans would accept working conditions that Anunnaki considered degrading. And being created specifically for labor, humans would not question their role the way the Anunnaki workers had. This paints a dark picture of humanity's origin. We were designed to be slaves, biological tools created to perform tasks that our creators found unpleasant. The tablets do not romanticize this. They state it plainly. Humans were made to work. The Anunnaki's labor problem was solved by creating a new species to do the work for them. But the tablets also describe an evolution in this relationship. Early humans worked under direct Anunnaki supervision. They were assigned tasks, given instructions, and monitored constantly. But over time, humans became more independent. They began to think for themselves, to question, to develop their own culture and society. And some Anunnaki, particularly Enki, encouraged this development. Enki appears in numerous Sumerian myths as a friend to humanity. He is the one who warns Ziusudra about the coming flood, who provides the boat specifications, who ensures humanity's survival despite the decision of other Anunnaki to let humans perish. Why would Enki act this way? The tablets suggest it is because Enki was the primary architect of humanity's creation. He designed us. He felt responsibility for us. And as humans developed beyond their original purpose, Enki saw potential worth preserving. This brings us back to the ocean. If humans were created to work in ocean resource extraction, and if Enki supervised ocean operations as Lord of the Abzu, then Enki would have had the most direct interaction with early humans. He would have seen us develop, watched us learn, observed us beginning to think and create beyond our programming. And perhaps, as a scientist and creator, he found this development fascinating rather than threatening. Other Anunnaki leaders, particularly Enlil, viewed human development with alarm. The tablets describe Enlil as increasingly disturbed by human population growth and human independence. Humans were multiplying rapidly, spreading across the earth, beginning to use knowledge the Anunnaki had taught them for their own purposes. Enlil saw this as a loss of control, a potential threat, and he advocated for reducing or eliminating the human population before humans became powerful enough to challenge Anunnaki authority. The flood was Enlil's solution, not a flood he caused directly, but a natural catastrophe he allowed to occur without warning humanity. The tablets describe the Anunnaki knowing in advance that a great deluge was coming. They debated what to do. Enlil argued that this was an opportunity to reset the experiment. Let the flood wipe out most of humanity. The few Anunnaki still on Earth could weather the catastrophe in their flying vehicles, then return to a cleansed world where they could restart with a smaller, more controllable human population. Enki dissented. He saw the flood as a tragedy that would destroy valuable life and knowledge, but he was outvoted. The Anunnaki Council decided to let the flood occur without warning humans. Enki, bound by the Council's decision, could not directly warn humanity, but he found a workaround. He spoke to the wall of a reed hut where Ziusudra was sleeping. The wall heard Enki's voice. Ziusudra, sleeping behind the wall, heard it too. Technically, Enki had not directly addressed a human. He had spoken to a wall. The wall had relayed the message. This bit of legalistic cleverness saved humanity. Ziusudra built the boat according to specifications that could only have come from someone with advanced engineering knowledge. The dimensions given in the tablets produce a vessel with optimal stability in rough seas. The proportions are nearly identical to those used in modern cargo ships, designed for maximum stability. Ziusudra filled the boat with animals, seeds, and examples of human knowledge. When the flood came, he survived. His family survived. The genetic and cultural diversity necessary to rebuild human civilization survived. The geological event that inspired this flood narrative was likely the rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. This was not a single flood, but a series of catastrophic flooding events over several thousand years, as ice sheets melted and sea levels rose more than 300 feet. For coastal populations, these flooding events would have been apocalyptic. Entire regions submerged, cities swallowed, populations forced to flee or drown. If the Anunnaki maintained ocean facilities in coastal regions, or on what was then exposed continental shelf, these facilities would have been destroyed or submerged. The infrastructure they had built over thousands of years would have been rendered useless. The carefully established extraction operations would have been disrupted, and the rising seas would have made it difficult or impossible to re-establish operations at previous sites. This explains the timing of the Anunnaki's departure. They did not leave because of the flood itself. They left because the flood destroyed the infrastructure and changed the conditions that had made their Earth operations viable. With ocean extraction sites submerged and coastal access drowned, continuing operations would have required complete redesign and reconstruction. The cost-benefit calculation changed. Earth was no longer the easy resource source it had been. Other locations might offer better return on investment. So they left. Not all at once, but gradually. The tablets describe a period after the flood when some Anunnaki remained. They helped humans rebuild. They re-established contact with surviving human populations. They shared knowledge. But over time, fewer Anunnaki stayed. The tablets describe them ascending to the heavens more frequently, returning less often, until finally, they were described as distant, watching from afar but no longer intervening. The last references to direct Anunnaki presence on Earth come from around 2000 BCE in Sumerian records. After that, the Anunnaki become memory rather than current reality. They transition from living gods to mythological figures. Their technology becomes magic in human retellings. Their vehicles become divine chariots. Their genetic engineering becomes divine breath, giving life to clay. But the knowledge they left behind persisted. Astronomy, mathematics, metallurgy, agriculture, writing itself. The Sumerians possessed all of these technologies fully developed from their earliest appearance in history. There was no gradual development period. The first Sumerian cities were planned and sophisticated. The first Sumerian astronomical texts were accurate and complex. The first Sumerian mathematical tablets used a base, 6-0 counting system that we still use for measuring time and angles. Where did this knowledge come from? The conventional answer is that it developed in the region over time, and we simply lack evidence of the developmental period. The alternative answer, supported by the tablets themselves, is that the knowledge was taught to humans by the Anunnaki. As the Anunnaki prepared to leave, they ensured that humans would be able to continue developing civilization without direct supervision. They left us with tools, both intellectual and physical, to continue the work they had started. This interpretation is supported by what the tablets say about human intelligence. Early in the creation narratives, humans are described as limited, unable to understand complex concepts, capable of following instructions but not of independent thought. But later, tablets describe humans differently. as wise, as knowledgeable, as possessing understanding that rivals the Anunnaki themselves in some domains. What changed? According to the tablets, the Anunnaki enhanced human intelligence over time. The genetic design was refined through multiple iterations. Early humans were limited because their cognitive capabilities were intentionally restricted. The Anunnaki wanted workers, not rivals. But as humans proved valuable and as some Anunnaki, particularly Enki, developed affection for humanity, restrictions were removed. Human cognitive potential was unlocked. We were allowed to become fully intelligent beings capable of independent development. Enki is credited specifically with this enhancement. Multiple tablets describe him granting humans the me, which translates roughly as divine powers or divine attributes. These included knowledge, arts, sciences, and cultural institutions. Enki is described as teaching humans writing, astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and other civilizational foundations. He did this sometimes against the wishes of other Anunnaki, who worried that humans with too much knowledge would become dangerous. Those worries were not entirely unfounded. As humans became more capable, they did become less controllable. They stopped being purely subservient. They developed their own agendas, their own goals, their own understanding of the world. They began to question the Anunnaki's authority. And eventually, they reached a point where the relationship between humans and Anunnaki was more complex than simple master and slave. This evolution is visible in how the tablets describe different periods. Early texts portray humans as purely functional, workers, tools, property. Later texts describe humans as subjects, people with rights and responsibilities, albeit lesser rights than the Anunnaki themselves. The latest texts describe humans as nearly equal to the Anunnaki in some contexts, capable of understanding and applying knowledge that was originally Anunnaki exclusive. This progression suggests that the Anunnaki's departure was not just about geological changes making Earth less valuable. It was also about humans becoming developed enough that continued Anunnaki presence was no longer necessary. We had been taught what we needed to know. We had been given the tools to continue advancing on our own. The training wheels could come off. But the tablets also suggest the departure was not permanent. References to the Anunnaki watching from afar, promises that they would return when humanity reached certain milestones, descriptions of signs that would herald their return. The tablets do not specify exactly what these signs are, but they imply a moment when humanity demonstrates readiness for renewed contact. Some alternative researchers believe that moment is approaching. They point to humanity's rapid technological advancement in the last century, our development of nuclear energy, our first steps into space, our growing understanding of genetics and the ability to manipulate life at the molecular level. All of these, they argue, are milestones the Anunnaki might have set as indicators of human readiness. If the Anunnaki are indeed watching, if they have monitoring systems or outposts in the solar system tracking human development, then our current trajectory might trigger their return. We are approaching the technological level the Anunnaki possessed when they first arrived on Earth. We are beginning to do things they did, to explore domains they explored, to manipulate forces they manipulated. And we are beginning to explore the ocean depths, developing technology to operate in the Abzu, creating robots that can descend to the deepest trenches, building models for extracting resources from seawater, investigating the potential of deep-sea mining. In other words, we are finally capable of doing what the Anunnaki came to Earth to do, what they assigned workers to the lower waters to accomplish, what they created humanity to help them complete. When we cross the threshold of actually implementing large-scale ocean resource extraction, when we establish permanent facilities in the deep sea, when we begin harvesting materials from the ocean at industrial scale, that might be the signal, the indicator that humanity has matured, that we are ready, that contact can be restored. This is speculation, of course. The tablets do not provide a checklist of specific achievements that will trigger the Anunnaki's return, but they do establish the principle that the Anunnaki's departure was conditional. They left because circumstances changed, but they remained connected, watching, waiting, and they communicated expectations that one day the relationship would resume. What form that renewed contact might take is uncertain. The tablets describe the early relationship between Anunnaki and humans as hierarchical, masters and servants, teachers and students, parents and children. But the later relationship was more collegial. The tablets from the later Sumerian period describe humans negotiating with Anunnaki, making agreements, having conversations that approach dialogue between equals, albeit with the Anunnaki still holding ultimate authority. If contact resumes today, the power dynamic would be different than it was in ancient times. Modern humans are armed, organized, and technologically advanced in ways our ancestors were not. We control nuclear weapons. We have global communication systems. We have developed ideologies of human rights and autonomy that would resist subjugation. The Anunnaki could not simply resume the old relationship of gods and servants. They would need to deal with humanity as equals, or at least as junior partners rather than as property. How would humanity respond to such contact? The question generates wildly different answers depending on who you ask. Some would welcome the Anunnaki as creators and benefactors. Others would view them as colonizers and exploiters who used Earth for their own purposes without regard for the beings who lived here. Some would see reunion as an opportunity to learn and advance. Others would see it as a threat to human autonomy and sovereignty. The tablets suggest the Anunnaki themselves had mixed feelings about humanity. Enki is consistently portrayed as favorable toward humans. He protected us, taught us, enhanced us beyond our original design parameters. But Enlil and other Anunnaki leaders viewed humans with suspicion. We were useful but potentially dangerous. Our rapid population growth and increasing capabilities worried them. They saw us as a created species that might eventually surpass or threaten our creators. That tension never fully resolved in the tablets. The narratives end with the Anunnaki departing, but the relationship with humanity unresolved. There was no final treaty, no formal agreement about future interaction, just a slow withdrawal and an implied expectation that contact would eventually resume when circumstances warranted. Those circumstances might be approaching, or they might still be centuries or millennia away. The tablets do not provide a timeline. 2. They describe principles, relationships, and long-term patterns, but they do not give us a date for the Anunnaki's return. We can only watch for signs, developments that might indicate their approach or their renewed interest in Earth. And the most logical domain to watch is the ocean. If the tablets are accurate, the ocean was central to why the Anunnaki came to Earth in the first place. Ocean resources were valuable enough to justify interplanetary travel. Ocean extraction operations were significant enough to employ large numbers of Anunnaki workers, and eventually to prompt the creation of an entirely new species to assist with the work. If those resources are still valuable, if the Anunnaki still need what Earth's oceans contain, then humanity's development of ocean extraction capability would naturally draw their attention. We would be approaching the same domain they once controlled, accessing the same resources they once needed, operating in the Abzu, the realm that was Enki's domain, and the site of humanity's creation. This makes ocean exploration and ocean resource development more than just economic or scientific ventures. If the tablets are accurate, ocean operations connect to our deepest origins, to the circumstances of our creation, to the purposes for which we were designed, and potentially to the conditions under which our relationship with our creators might be restored. These are profound implications. They transform ocean science from a purely terrestrial discipline into a search for evidence about humanity's cosmic connections. Every deep-sea survey becomes potentially significant. Every ocean floor anomaly becomes worth investigating. Every unexplained structure or concentrated material deposit becomes a possible link to the Anunnaki's operations. Mainstream science rejects these implications. The ocean floor is studied for its geology, its biology, its chemistry, its role in Earth systems, not for evidence of ancient extraterrestrial mining operations. Researchers looking for such evidence would struggle to secure funding or institutional support. Their work would be dismissed as pseudoscience. But the dismissal might be premature. The tablets exist. They describe ocean operations with surprising specificity. They provide context that makes sense in light of what we know about ocean resources and the challenges of ocean extraction. They establish motivations for advanced beings to visit Earth that are more rational than most ancient astronaut theories suggest. Not conquest or colonization, but resource extraction, industrial operations, economic activity that happen to require using our planet and eventually creating us to assist with the work. This is not the stuff of typical mythology. Mythological gods are usually concerned with human behavior, morality, and worship. They smite sinners and reward the faithful. They care about what humans think and how humans behave. The Anunnaki, as described in the tablets, care about production quotas and resource management. They are less like gods and more like corporate middle management dealing with labor disputes and operational challenges. That practical, bureaucratic tone is exactly why some researchers take the tablets seriously as historical documents, rather than pure mythology. Mythological inventions tend toward the dramatic and the moral. They explain why thunder happens or why we should honor our parents. The Sumerian tablets, especially the economic and administrative texts, explain why certain Anunnaki workers were assigned to certain locations and what they were extracting. That is not mythological content. That is bookkeeping. And buried in that bookkeeping are references to the lower waters, to the Abzu, to ocean operations that required significant labor investment, to materials extracted from beneath the waves, to facilities that existed in deep water, to technology that allowed underwater work, to the creation of humans specifically to replace workers who found ocean work unbearable. These references are scattered across hundreds of tablets from different cities and different time periods. They are consistent in their basic claims even when details vary. The consistency suggests an underlying historical reality. Different scribes in different locations recording information about the same events or operations. If it were pure invention, we would expect more variation, more contradiction, more obviously mythological content. Instead, we get administrative precision, workers assigned to sites, materials extracted in quantities, rations calculated for laborers, overseers reporting to superiors, all the mundane details of an actual operation rather than the grand narratives of mythology. This is what makes the Sumerian tablets so frustrating and so fascinating. They describe extraordinary things in ordinary language. They present claims that challenge everything we think we know about ancient history, but they present those claims in the tone of bureaucratic reports, and they do it consistently across thousands of texts created over thousands of years. Either the Sumerians engaged in the most elaborate, sustained, and pointless hoax in human history, creating fake administrative records about non-existent operations for reasons we cannot begin to fathom, or they were recording actual events, actual operations, actual beings who came to Earth and did what the tablets describe. The mainstream default position is that the tablets are mythological and symbolic, that the Anunnaki represent natural forces or cultural concepts rather than physical beings, that the creation of humans is a metaphor for the development of civilization, that references to ocean operations are symbolic of cosmological principles. But what if that default position is wrong? What if we have been interpreting the tablets through a mythological lens when they should be read as history? What if the Sumerians were trying to tell us literally what happened, and we have been assuming they were speaking metaphorically? That possibility requires taking the tablets at face value, reading them as observers, recording events they witnessed or were told about, treating their descriptions of technology, operations, and beings as attempts to accurately document reality rather than as symbolic or imaginative content. When we read the tablets that way, a different picture of ancient Earth emerges, a planet visited by advanced beings from elsewhere, a planet used for resource extraction, particularly ocean resource extraction, a planet where those beings eventually created a new species to help with the work, a planet where catastrophic geological changes disrupted operations and prompted the visitors to leave, and a planet where that departure was not permanent but conditional on future developments. That picture aligns with certain anomalies in the archaeological and geological records. The sudden appearance of sophisticated urban civilization in Mesopotamia without an apparent developmental period. The advanced astronomical knowledge that Sumerians possessed without visible means of discovery. The precise mathematical systems that appeared fully formed. The metallurgical techniques that seemed too advanced for the available technology. All of these make more sense if humans were being taught by more advanced beings than if humans were developing everything independently. It also aligns with geological evidence of catastrophic flooding at the end of the last ice age, the rapid sea level rise, the submersion of coastal settlements and vast regions of exposed continental shelf, the disruption to early human populations. All of this matches what the tablets describe as the flood that changed everything, and it aligns with genetic evidence of a population bottleneck in human history, the narrow genetic diversity of modern humans, the relatively recent common ancestors, the evidence of rapid population expansion from a small founding group, all consistent with a species that went through a designed creation event rather than purely natural evolution. None of this constitutes proof. The evidence is circumstantial, open to multiple interpretations. Mainstream science has conventional explanations for all of it that do not require ancient astronauts or genetic engineering, but the alternative interpretation exists. Number 4 goes to brings F, and the tablets themselves argue for that alternative. We stand at a unique moment. Our technology is finally approaching levels where we can test some of the tablets' claims directly. We can explore the ocean depths systematically. We can map the seafloor in high resolution. We can analyze materials and structures we find there. We can look for evidence of ancient operations in locations the tablets describe as Anunnaki sites. This search will either confirm that the ocean floor is exactly what conventional geology expects, or it will reveal anomalies that require explanation, structures that appear artificial, material concentrations that suggest processing, formations that resist natural explanation. Any of these would warrant further investigation. And if that further investigation produced even a single artifact of unambiguous artificial origin, an extreme antiquity from an ocean location the tablets associated with Anunnaki operations, everything would change. The paradigm would shift. Ancient astronaut theories would gain credibility. The tablets would be re-examined as historical documents. And the question of humanity's relationship to visiting extraterrestrial beings would move from fringe speculation to mainstream scientific investigation. That artifact has not yet been found. Or, if it has been found, it has not been recognized for what it is, or it has been recognized but not publicly acknowledged. All three possibilities exist. The ocean floor is largely unexplored. Anomalies could exist that we have not yet discovered, or they could exist in collected data that has not been fully analyzed, or they could exist in collections that are being studied but results have not been published. The search continues, slowly, incrementally. As ocean technology improves and as funding for ocean research expands, our capacity to find evidence increases. Each deep-sea expedition covers new territory. Each new sonar survey reveals features not previously mapped. Each collection of seafloor samples provides material for analysis. Somewhere in that ongoing work, evidence might emerge. A metal fragment with isotopic ratios that do not match natural formation processes. A structural feature that clearly shows tooling marks. A concentration of materials that cannot be explained by natural accumulation. Any of these would be significant. Any would demand explanation beyond conventional geology, and the tablets would suddenly become relevant to that explanation, because the tablets have already described such things, already claimed that operations occurred, already specified what was being extracted and processed. The tablets provide a framework for interpreting anomalous evidence, a context in which otherwise inexplicable findings make sense. This is why the Sumerian tablets cannot be simply dismissed as mythology. They contain too much specific information, too many details that align with what we now know about ocean resources and extraction challenges, too many predictions about what we might find if we looked carefully enough. The tablets are waiting to be proven or disproven, and the ocean is waiting to reveal whether evidence of ancient Anunnaki operations exists beneath the waves. The intersection of ancient text and modern exploration is where answers will be found, where the question of whether the tablets describe real history or imaginative mythology will finally be resolved. Until then, we continue. We explore. We search. We remain open to possibilities that challenge conventional understanding. And we remember that the Sumerians themselves insisted they were recording truth, that the Anunnaki were real, that operations occurred, that humanity was created for specific purposes, and that the story is not over. The departure was not the end. It was an intermission, and contact will resume when the time is right. The tablets have preserved that message across thousands of years, through the rise and fall of civilizations, through conquests and catastrophes, through periods when the tablets were buried and forgotten, and periods when they were rediscovered and translated. The message has survived, and it points us toward the ocean, toward the Abzu, toward the depths where the Anunnaki worked and where humanity's origin story began. We are finally capable of following where the tablets point, of searching the depths, of looking for evidence, of testing whether the extraordinary claims have any foundation in physical reality. The ocean awaits, the search continues, and the truth, whatever it may be, lies waiting in the darkness of the deep sea, in the realm that was Enki's domain, in the Abzu where gods labored and humans were created, in the waters that cover most of our world and hold secrets we are only beginning to access. The Sumerian tablets have told us what to look for. Modern technology has given us the tools to search. All that remains is the search itself, the systematic investigation, the commitment to follow evidence wherever it leads, even into territory that challenges everything we think we know about human origins and ancient history. The tablets are patient. They have waited this long. They can wait longer, but we, with our limited lifespans and urgent curiosity, want answers now. We want to know whether the Anunnaki were real, whether they operated in our oceans, whether they created us, whether they departed with intention to return. The ocean knows. The depths hold the answers. And we, children of those who served the Anunnaki, according to the tablets, are finally ready to descend into the Abzu and see what we find. Ready to search for evidence of the operations our ancestors described. Ready to test whether clay tablets carved thousands of years ago contain historical truth or elaborate fiction. Ready to discover what the Anunnaki truly saw in Earth's oceans, and whether any trace of their presence remains. Modern oceanography has made discoveries in recent decades that add intriguing context to the tablets' claims. Hydrothermal vent systems, first discovered in 1977, continuously precipitate valuable minerals from superheated water. These underwater geysers occur along mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates are spreading apart. Water seeps into cracks in the ocean floor, gets heated by underlying magma to temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, dissolves minerals from the surrounding rock, then erupts back into the cold ocean water. When the superheated, mineral-rich water contacts cold seawater, the dissolved minerals rapidly precipitate out of solution. Over time, these precipitates accumulate into massive chimneys and mounds around the vents. The deposits contain copper, zinc, iron, silver, and gold. Some vent fields contain commercially significant concentrations of these metals. The Atlantis II deep in the Red Sea, for example, contains an estimated 94 million tons of metalliferous sediment with extractable quantities of zinc, copper, silver, and gold. If the Anunnaki possessed technology to harvest these vent deposits, they would have had access to concentrated sources of valuable metals without the need to process enormous volumes of seawater. The tablet's references to heat, darkness, and danger in the Abzu align perfectly with conditions around hydrothermal vents. The superheated water would be dangerous to biological beings, even with protective equipment. The toxic chemicals dissolved in vent water, including heavy metals and sulfides, would create hazardous working conditions. And the complete darkness of the deep ocean would require artificial lighting for any work. The locations of major hydrothermal vent systems might provide clues about where Anunnaki operations occurred. If we could identify vent systems that were active during the last ice age when sea levels were lower, those might have been the specific sites the tablets reference. Geological surveys could potentially identify ancient vent deposits that are no longer active, but that accumulated significant mineral wealth during the period when the Anunnaki allegedly operated on Earth. Another modern discovery relevant to the tablets is the existence of polymetallic nodules on the abyssal plains. These are potato-sized rocks found on the deep ocean floor, particularly in the Pacific Ocean. They form through precipitation of metals from seawater over millions of years. Individual nodules contain manganese, iron, copper, nickel, and cobalt. They cover vast areas of the ocean floor in some regions. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific is estimated to contain billions of tons of these nodules. Several countries and corporations are currently developing technology to harvest polymetallic nodules. The process involves remotely operated vehicles that collect nodules from the seafloor and transport them to surface ships for processing. This is exactly the kind of ocean mining operation the tablets might be describing. The Anunnaki could have harvested similar deposits using their own technology. The nodules would provide a steady, accessible source of valuable metals without the need for deep excavation. The tablet's references to workers hauling heavy materials from the ocean floor could describe nodule collection. The work would be physically demanding even with advanced equipment. The nodules are dense and numerous. Collecting them in quantities sufficient for industrial processing would require extensive effort. And the repetitive nature of the work, gathering nodules from vast expanses of seafloor, would be exactly the kind of grinding labor that might provoke rebellion among workers who found it degrading. Cobalt, one of the metals concentrated in polymetallic nodules, has interesting properties that might explain Anunnaki interest. Cobalt is essential for certain high-temperature alloys. It is used in powerful magnets. It is necessary for certain battery technologies. An advanced civilization might need cobalt for applications we have not yet discovered. The tablets do not specify why certain metals were valuable to the Anunnaki, only that they were. Modern knowledge of metal applications provides possibilities. The deep ocean also contains massive deposits of methane hydrates. These are ice-like substances formed when methane gas is trapped in water ice under the high pressure and low temperature conditions of the deep sea. Methane hydrate deposits are found on continental slopes and in polar regions. The total amount of methane trapped in hydrates worldwide is enormous, potentially exceeding all known conventional natural gas reserves combined. Methane hydrates are considered a potential future energy source, though extracting them safely remains technically challenging. Destabilizing hydrate deposits could release massive amounts of methane into the ocean and atmosphere, with significant environmental consequences. But for an advanced civilization with appropriate technology, methane hydrates could provide abundant hydrocarbon fuel or chemical feedstock. The tablets do not mention methane specifically, but they reference substances extracted from the ocean depths that had properties useful to the Anunnaki. Methane or its derivatives could fit that description. Natural gas is chemically simple but energetically valuable. An advanced civilization might use methane as fuel, as a chemical building block, or as a component in technologies we do not yet understand. Rare earth elements, essential for modern electronics and advanced materials, are also found in ocean sediments and vent deposits. These elements, despite their name, are not actually rare in Earth's crust, but they are rarely concentrated in economically extractable deposits on land. Ocean floor sediments, particularly in certain regions of the Pacific, contain significant concentrations of rare earth elements. Japan has announced plans to develop rare earth extraction from deep-sea mud. China dominates terrestrial rare earth production, creating geopolitical concerns for other nations that depend on these materials. Ocean sources could diversify supply. For the Anunnaki, rare earth elements might have been valuable for technology applications. Many rare earths have unique magnetic, optical, or catalytic properties. An advanced civilization would likely use these elements extensively. The specific locations where ocean floor resources are concentrated might correlate with sites the tablets identify as Anunnaki operational zones. If researchers were to overlay maps of modern resource concentrations with ancient coastlines from the last Ice Age period, patterns might emerge. Regions that were accessible coastal areas during low sea level periods and that also contain valuable mineral deposits, would be logical sites for extraction operations. The Persian Gulf, for example, was largely dry land during glacial maximum periods. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flowed through a broad valley that is now underwater. Sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. What is now the floor of the Persian Gulf was terrestrial environment. If the Anunnaki operated in this region, evidence of their facilities would now be submerged beneath Gulf waters. The same applies to many coastal regions worldwide. The Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia was exposed during low sea levels, creating a landmass called Sundaland that connected modern Indonesia, Malaysia, and parts of Southeast Asia. The Sahul Shelf connected Australia and New Guinea. Vast regions of what are now continental shelf were dry land. Any facilities built in those regions during the Ice Age would now be underwater. This has led some researchers to propose that many ancient sites of human and possibly Anunnaki activity are now submerged. They advocate for systematic survey of continental shelf regions, looking for evidence of structures, settlements, or industrial sites from the period before the post-glacial flooding. Such surveys are expensive and technically challenging, but they could revolutionize our understanding of ancient history if they discovered significant sites. The technology required for deep-sea operations has advanced dramatically in recent decades. Remotely operated vehicles can now dive to the deepest ocean trenches. Autonomous underwater vehicles can map large areas of seafloor with minimal human supervision. Submersibles can transport humans to the deep ocean for direct observation, and advances in materials science have produced equipment that can withstand the crushing pressure of deep water. The deepest point in the ocean, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, lies approximately 11,000 meters below sea level. The pressure at that depth is more than 1,000 times atmospheric pressure at sea level. Water temperature is barely above freezing. No sunlight penetrates. The environment is utterly hostile to unprotected human life. Yet we have sent vehicles and even humans in protected submersibles to the bottom. If the Anunnaki possessed technology superior to ours, they could have operated at any ocean depth. The tablet's references to extreme conditions in the Abzu could describe work in the deepest trenches or in other challenging environments like under ice shelves or in areas of high volcanic activity. The workers' complaints about unbearable conditions make sense when we consider what deep ocean work entails even with advanced technology. The psychological challenges of deep-sea work should not be underestimated. Modern submarine crews undergo extensive training to cope with the isolation, confinement, and monotony of extended underwater operations. Deep-sea oil rig workers face similar challenges. The combination of physical danger, environmental hostility, and psychological stress from isolation creates conditions that test human endurance. For the Anunnaki, even with superior technology, these factors would accumulate over time. 40 periods of such work, whatever the actual time frame, could break morale and provoke rebellion. The solution they implemented, creating humans to replace themselves in the most difficult work, makes practical sense from an engineering perspective. If you cannot improve working conditions sufficiently to make them tolerable for your own workers, create a workforce better adapted to those conditions. Humans, being designed for Earth environment, would find ocean work challenging but within our biological tolerances. We can adapt to isolation. We can learn to operate in hazardous environments. And being created specifically for labor, we would not have the same expectations of comfort that the Anunnaki presumably had. This pragmatic, almost clinical approach to solving a labor problem is consistent with the tone of the tablets. The creation of humanity is described as an engineering project, not a mystical or spiritual act. Ninmar experiments with different designs. She tests various genetic combinations. She iterates toward an optimal solution. The language is that of product development, not divine inspiration. Modern genetic engineering follows similar processes. Scientists testing new genetic modifications try different combinations. They evaluate results. They refine their approach based on what works and what does not. The tablets describe the Anunnaki doing this thousands of years ago. Either the Sumerians had remarkable insight into how genetic engineering would eventually work, or they were recording observations of actual genetic engineering being performed. The ethical implications of creating a sentient species specifically for labor are profound. By modern ethical standards, such an action would be monstrous. Creating beings capable of suffering and forcing them into servitude violates fundamental principles of autonomy and dignity. But the tablets present it matter-of-factly. The Anunnaki had a problem. Creating humans solved the problem. The moral dimension seems not to have concerned them initially. This changes over time in the narratives. Later tablets show awareness of human suffering and human rights. Enki argues for protecting humans from destruction during the flood. Other tablets describe laws and codes that give humans certain protections and rights, even while maintaining Anunnaki authority. There is an evolution in how the Anunnaki related to humans, from purely instrumental use to something approaching moral consideration. This evolution might reflect actual changes in the relationship, or it might reflect human authors projecting their own developing ethics onto the Anunnaki characters. We cannot know for certain, but the pattern is there. The relationship between Anunnaki and humans becomes more complex and more ethically nuanced in later tablets than in early creation accounts. If contact between humans and Anunnaki were to resume today, this ethical dimension would be central. Modern humans have developed strong ideologies around autonomy, consent, and rights. We would not accept being treated as created property. We would insist on recognition as independent beings with our own agency. Any resumed relationship would need to account for how humans have developed beyond our original design parameters. The tablets hint that the Anunnaki might have anticipated this. Enki's intervention to preserve humanity during the flood, his teaching of knowledge to humans, his enhancement of human intelligence beyond original specifications, all suggest that at least some Anunnaki leaders recognized that humans would eventually develop beyond simple servitude. Enki might have been preparing us for eventual independence, for a time when we could stand as equals rather than subordinates. That time may have arrived, or it may still be approaching, but we are closer now than any previous generation of humans to matching the technological capabilities the tablets attribute to the Anunnaki. We can travel to space. We can manipulate genetics. We can harness nuclear energy. We can communicate globally instantaneously, and we are beginning to operate in the ocean depths, the domain that was central to the Anunnaki's presence on Earth. Each advance in ocean technology brings us closer to being able to verify the tablet's claims. We are developing the capability to search systematically, to map completely, to analyze thoroughly. The ocean floor will not keep its secrets much longer. Within this century, possibly within decades, we will have surveyed enough of the deep ocean to know whether evidence of ancient operations exists. That evidence could take many forms. The most dramatic would be intact structures or machinery. But after 12,000 years of submersion, even advanced materials would show degradation. More likely, evidence would be indirect. Anomalous concentrations of processed materials, geometric patterns in seafloor features, isotopic signatures in metal deposits that indicate artificial processing. Any of these would warrant investigation. The key is maintaining openness to anomalous findings. Current ocean research is not designed to look for ancient extraterrestrial artifacts. Researchers focus on natural processes. When anomalies are found, the default interpretation is natural explanation. This is scientifically appropriate. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but it also means that evidence could be overlooked if it is not obviously artificial. The tablets provide a framework for recognizing what might otherwise be dismissed. If we know to look for evidence of extraction operations, for signs of mineral processing, for structural remains in deep water, we can design surveys that might detect such evidence. We can analyze data with appropriate hypotheses in mind. We can ask questions that might reveal patterns invisible to standard geological interpretation. This does not mean abandoning scientific rigor. It means expanding the range of hypotheses we are willing to test, including among our possibilities that advanced operations occurred in Earth's oceans thousands of years ago, that beings from elsewhere used our resources, that evidence of their activity might still exist despite millennia of erosion and sedimentation. Testing that hypothesis requires only that we look, that we examine what we find with care, that we remain open to conclusions that challenge conventional understanding. The tablets have made testable claims. Ocean operations occurred, facilities existed, materials were extracted. These are not vague assertions. They are specific enough that we should be able to find evidence if the claims are true. The search itself is valuable regardless of outcome. Exploring the ocean depths advances knowledge whether or not we find ancient artifacts. Understanding ocean resources benefits humanity whether or not the Anunnaki once extracted those same resources. Developing deep-sea technology serves current needs whether or not we ultimately discover evidence of ancient operations. But finding that evidence would transform everything, would validate alternative interpretations of ancient history, would confirm that we are not alone in the universe and never have been, would reveal that human origins are far stranger than conventional biology suggests, would open questions about our future relationship with beings who created us and who might return. The implications would cascade through every domain of human thought. Science would need to reassess timelines and capabilities of ancient civilizations. Religion would need to reckon with evidence that creation narratives are partially literal. Philosophy would grapple with what it means to be a designed species. Politics would face questions about humanity's sovereignty over Earth if others have prior claims. These are not comfortable implications. They challenge core assumptions. They destabilize foundations of how we understand ourselves. But truth does not bend to our comfort. If the tablets describe real events, then real evidence exists. And finding that evidence, however disruptive, advances understanding. We stand at the threshold of discovery. Our technology is finally adequate. Our curiosity is engaged. Our capacity to search systematically is growing every year. The ocean is vast, but it is not infinite. With time and effort, we can explore it thoroughly. And the tablets are waiting, preserved for thousands of years, containing descriptions of operations that should have left physical traces, pointing us toward the ocean depths, toward the Abzu, toward the domain where gods worked and humans were created. We are finally ready to follow where the tablets point, to search for what they describe, to test whether our ancestors recorded truth or invention, to discover what the Anunnaki truly saw in Earth's oceans and whether any remnant of their presence endures beneath the waves. The journey into the Abzu is both literal and metaphorical. Literally, it is the descent into ocean depths using technology and methodology. Metaphorically, it is the exploration of humanity's deepest origins, the examination of our relationship to the cosmos, the investigation of whether we were shaped by forces beyond pure terrestrial evolution. Both journeys matter, both advance understanding, and both are now possible in ways they have never been before. The Sumerian tablets have preserved their message across vast stretches of time. They have survived the collapse of the civilization that created them. They have endured conquest, fire, and burial. They have waited through centuries of being unreadable and decades of slow translation, and they have finally delivered their message to a generation capable of testing their claims. That message points to the ocean, to operations that occurred in the depths, to resources the Anunnaki valued, to facilities they built, to work they performed until they could no longer bear it and created us to continue. We can search for evidence of all this. We can investigate whether the tablets describe history or myth. We can follow the clues they provide and see where they lead. The ocean depths await, dark, cold, and full of secrets that predate written history. Secrets about visitors who came from elsewhere, who used our world for their purposes, who found in our waters what they needed, who created us to help them, and who left, but perhaps not forever. The tablets say they will return, when the time is right, when humanity is ready, when conditions warrant renewed contact. Are we ready? Have we tossed threshold? Will our exploration of the ocean depths trigger their return? Or will we find only empty seafloor, confirming that the tablets are mythology after all? These questions can only be answered through investigation, through systematic search, through commitment to following evidence wherever it leads. The Sumerian tablets have given us the map. Modern technology has given us the tools. The ocean has preserved the evidence, if evidence exists. All that remains is the search itself, the descent into the Abzu, the investigation of depths where few have ventured, the examination of what lies beneath waves that have covered the evidence for 12,000 years. We are ready. The technology exists. The translations are complete. The locations are identified. The search can begin. And when we descend into those depths, when we shine light into darkness that has persisted for millennia, when we examine what we find with tools capable of revealing age and origin, we will finally know. We will know whether the Anunnaki were real, whether they operated in our oceans, whether they created us, whether they departed with intention to return, whether our ancestors recorded truth when they carved stories of gods who came from the stars and found in Earth's waters exactly what they needed. The ocean will answer, but only if we ask, only if we search, only if we take seriously the possibility that clay tablets created thousands of years ago might contain more truth than we have dared to imagine. The depths are calling, the Abzu awaits, and the legacy of the Anunnaki, whatever form it takes, lies waiting beneath the waves, waiting for us to finally become capable of finding it, waiting for technology to match curiosity, waiting for the descendants of those who served to return to the sites where our story began. The Sumerian tablets point the way, the ocean preserves the evidence, and we, at last, can follow where both lead, into the depths, into the darkness, into the Abzu, where gods once labored and humans were born, where operations occurred that ancient scribes tried their best to record, where truth lies buried beneath sediment and time. The search begins now, or continues now, for it has already begun in small ways. Each ocean survey, each deep-sea expedition, each analysis of seafloor samples, all contribute to the investigation. But now we know what to look for. Now we understand what the tablets describe. Now we can design our searches to test specific claims, rather than simply documenting natural features. The tablets describe ocean operations. We can search for evidence of operations. The tablets describe facilities in deep water. We can search for structural remains. The tablets describe extraction of specific materials. We can analyze concentrations and isotopes. Every claim the tablets make can be tested. Every description can be investigated. Every assertion can be examined against physical reality. And when we have searched thoroughly enough, when we have examined carefully enough, when we have analyzed rigorously enough, we will have our answer. Either the tablets will be confirmed as historical documents, or they will be revealed as imaginative mythology. Either outcome resolves the question. But we cannot know until we search, until we descend into the Abzu and see what remains. The ocean is patient. It has waited this long. It can wait longer. But we, with our brief lives and urgent questions, want answers now. Want to know the truth about our origins. Want to understand our relationship to the cosmos and to beings who might have shaped us. Those answers lie in the depths, in the realm Enki ruled, in the waters where the Anunnaki worked until they could work no more, in the Abzu where humanity's story truly began. If the tablets speak truth, we stand ready to search, ready to explore, ready to discover, ready to follow where the Sumerian tablets lead, into the ocean depths, into the darkness, into the ancient realm where gods and humans first met, and where evidence of that meeting might still remain. The tablets have preserved their message, the ocean has preserved the evidence, and we have finally developed the capability to connect the two. The search continues, the investigation proceeds, and the truth, whatever it may be, awaits discovery in the Abzu, in the deep waters, in the realm of hidden knowledge, in the ocean depths where the Anunnaki once saw resources worth crossing the solar system to obtain. We can see those same depths now, with instruments and technology, with submersibles and sensors, with all the tools modern science provides, and we can search for what the Anunnaki left behind, for evidence of their presence, for confirmation of their operations, for proof that the Sumerian tablets recorded history rather than myth. The ocean depths hold the answer, the Abzu preserves the truth, and we are finally ready to descend and discover what lies waiting in the darkness beneath the waves.